My name is Olivia Pierce, 29, a graphic designer who believed I'd found true love with Nathan Blackwell despite our different backgrounds. After 2 years together, I was on cloud nine when he proposed. But at our engagement dinner, his father called me a gold digger, and Nathan laughed. In that moment, everything crystallized. I slipped off the 2-carat diamond ring, placed it beside his plate, and walked out without a word. If you've ever had to stand up for yourself when someone who should have protected you failed, drop your story below and hit subscribe. Let me know where you're watching from as I share how I discovered my worth wasn't negotiable. I grew up in Portland with my mom, a dedicated middle school English teacher who raised me on her own after my dad left when I was 4. Money was always tight, but values weren't. Mom instilled in me a fierce independence and work ethic that became the foundation of who I am. Your worth isn't determined by what you have, but by what you build, she'd tell me while grading papers late into the night. Those words became my mantra as I put myself through design school, juggling 3 part-time jobs, barista mornings, restaurant hostess evenings, and weekend graphic design internship. I'd stay up until 2 a.m. finishing projects, fueled by cheap coffee and determination. My classmates complained about deadlines while vacationing during breaks. I worked through holidays to pay tuition. After graduation, I started at Henderson Design as a junior designer, making barely enough to afford my tiny studio apartment. I lived on ramen and ambition, pouring everything into building my portfolio. Each project became a stepping stone, each client relationship a brick in the foundation of my career. By 27, I'd worked my way up to senior designer, earning respect through talent and tenacity, not connections or family name. The week before I met Nathan, I'd landed the Meridian account, a major athletic apparel brand that would put our boutique agency on the map. My boss Jessica had trusted me to lead the pitch, and when we won, the entire office celebrated. That victory was sweeter than any handed to me. It was earned through late nights, creative risks, and refusing to give up when initial concepts were rejected. I met Nathan at the annual Arts Alliance fundraiser, where I'd volunteered to design promotional materials. He approached me at the reception, champagne flute in hand, curious about the event graphics. I assumed he was just another wealthy donor, making small talk until he spent the entire evening by my side, genuinely interested in my design process. Most people see a finished product, Nathan said, examining the program I'd created. They never appreciate the 100 decisions that made it what it is. Something in his observation struck me. He saw the work behind the work. When he asked for my number, I hesitated. His tailored suit and family name, the Blackwells owned half the real estate downtown, screamed different world. But his eyes were kind, his questions thoughtful, and for once, I ignored the voice warning me about people born with silver spoons. Our first date wasn't at some exclusive restaurant as I'd feared, but a hole-in-the-wall ramen place I'd mentioned loving. Though he did arrive in a car that cost more than my annual salary. When I teased him about it, he laughed. My dad's in the car business, he explained, which I later learned meant the family owned the largest luxury car dealership chain in 3 states. Despite our different backgrounds, conversation flowed effortlessly. Nathan was smart, curious, and surprisingly down-to-earth for someone who'd never worried about making rent. He loved art, hiking the Pacific Northwest trails, and had an encyclopedic knowledge of obscure films. While he occasionally dropped comments revealing his privilege, everyone's summers in the Hamptons, right? He seemed genuinely mortified when I pointed them out. Over the following months, our relationship deepened. Nathan showed up to my agency's holiday party and charmed my coworkers without flaunting his wealth. He listened intently when I shared design concepts, offering insights that showed he valued my expertise. When I landed a major campaign, he brought champagne and celebrated like it was the most important achievement in the world. I fell in love with the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, how he remembered small details about my friends, and his patience teaching me to ski after I'd admitted I'd never been. He seemed to love my directness, work ethic, and that I wasn't impressed by family names or bank accounts. After 14 months together, Nathan asked if I wanted to move in together. We found a modern apartment downtown, more expensive than I'd have chosen alone, but we compromised with me paying what I could afford in rent and Nathan covering the rest without making me feel lesser for it. My modest social circle embraced Nathan. My best friend Rachel, initially skeptical, trust fund babies are trouble, live, eventually admitted he seemed genuine. My mother, protective after watching me struggle, warmed to him when he spent an entire visit helping her rebuild her garden shed without complaint. I had limited exposure to Nathan's world during those first 18 months. I'd met his parents briefly at a charity gala, where they were polite but distant. His friends were a mix, some genuine, others clearly measuring my worth by my pedigree, or lack thereof. Nathan always defended me, once even leaving a yacht party when someone made a snobbish comment about my quaint career. That's why I never saw it coming. How could I? This man had held me through my grandmother's passing, celebrated my every professional win, and talked about our future with such certainty. When he proposed during our sunset hike to Angel's Rest, my favorite spot overlooking the Columbia River Gorge, I didn't hesitate to say yes. The ring was perfect, a vintage-inspired emerald-cut diamond that reflected my aesthetic, not some ostentatious rock that would have felt foreign on my finger. As he slipped it on, Nathan whispered, "I don't want to be me without you anymore." We celebrated with takeout and champagne in our apartment, calling my mom who cried happy tears and meeting Rachel and my coworkers for drinks afterward. Everything felt perfect, aligned, meant to be. The following week, Nathan suggested a formal engagement dinner with his family. "They want to welcome you properly," he said, kissing my forehead. "They're excited to have you join the family." I was nervous but thrilled. Despite our different backgrounds, I truly believed our love had bridged those worlds. I spent hours imagining finally becoming part of his family officially, naive to what that dinner would actually reveal. 2 weeks before the engagement dinner, panic set in about what to wear. My everyday wardrobe of jeans and blouses wouldn't cut it for dinner at the Blackwell estate. Rachel joined me for a shopping trip, our budget limited by my recent student loan payment. "What about this?" Rachel held up a navy cocktail dress at Nordstrom. "Too casual," I replied, remembering Nathan's mother in her pearls and tailored designer ensembles. We eventually found a forest green midi dress on sale, elegant enough for the occasion without breaking my bank account. When I showed Nathan that evening, his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "It's nice," he said, hesitating. "But maybe something more formal?" Mom mentioned everyone's dressing up. The next day, he texted a link to a black designer dress costing 3 times my monthly rent. "My treat," he added with a heart emoji. I declined politely, explaining I'd found something perfect already. His response, "Just want you to feel comfortable with everyone," left me with a subtle unease I quickly dismissed. The week before the dinner, I researched proper etiquette for high society dinners, watching YouTube videos on which fork to use when and appropriate conversation topics. I practiced responses to potential questions about my background, determined to make a good impression. "Just be yourself," Rachel advised during our coffee meetup. "If they don't appreciate you, that's their loss. They're just protective of Nathan," I defended. "Once they get to know me, they'll see we're perfect together." Nathan reassured me repeatedly, "They'll love you almost as much as I do," though I noticed he'd become increasingly distracted, checking his phone for messages from his mother about dinner arrangements. The evening of the dinner arrived with unexpected April showers. I'd spent extra time on my appearance. Hair styled in elegant waves, makeup polished but not overdone, the green dress complemented by simple pearl earrings that had belonged to my grandmother. Nathan whistled when I emerged from the bathroom. "Beautiful," he said, though his eyes darted to his watch. "We should get going. Dad hates tardiness." The Blackwell estate sat on 5 manicured acres in the West Hills, a sprawling Tudor-style mansion that made my childhood home look like a dollhouse. As we pulled through wrought iron gates, my stomach tightened. Rain pattered against the windshield as Nathan parked his Audi among the lineup of luxury vehicles. "Ready?" he asked, squeezing my hand briefly before his expression shifted to something more formal, a public face I rarely saw in our private life. The massive front door opened before we reached it, revealing Vivian Blackwell in a black cocktail dress, diamonds glittering at her throat and ears. Her smile was practiced, never reaching her eyes as she air-kissed Nathan's cheeks. "Darling, you're here. Everyone's waiting." Her gaze flicked over me, cataloging details. "Olivia, welcome." No hug, no warmth, just cool assessment. Lawrence Blackwell appeared in the foyer, tumbler of amber liquid in hand. Tall like Nathan but harder somehow, edges not softened by kindness. "The happy couple arrives," he announced, clapping Nathan on the shoulder before offering me a brief handshake. "Congratulations are in order, I understand." No mention of welcoming me to the family. No joy for his son's happiness. Nathan's siblings appeared next, Madison, sleek and blonde like her mother, offering a practiced smile, and Tyler, who at least attempted genuine friendliness by commenting on the terrible traffic from downtown. As we moved to the formal living room for pre-dinner drinks, I noticed Nathan subtly distancing himself, physically and emotionally. He stood with his father discussing business, while Madison interrogated me about my little design job. "So charming that you're creative," she said, swirling expensive scotch. "Is there much demand for—" what was it again? "Graphics?" "Graphic design," I corrected gently. "And yes, every brand needs visual communication. I just led a campaign for Meridian Athletics that increased their quarterly sales by 22%. "How industrious," Vivian interjected, appearing beside us. "Nathan mentioned you work quite a lot. I imagine that will change after the wedding." The assumption stung. "Actually, I love my career. I don't plan to give it up." An uncomfortable silence followed, broken by Lawrence announcing dinner was ready. The formal dining room intimidated with its crystal chandelier, antique silver, and table long enough to seat 16, though only 7 places were set. I found myself seated between Madison and Nathan's Aunt Patricia, with Nathan across and 4 seats away, beside his mother. The physical separation felt deliberate, making natural conversation impossible. "Nathan tells us you attended Portland State." Lawrence began as servers presented the first course. "Interesting choice." The implied criticism was clear. Why not a prestigious private university? "I earned a scholarship," I explained. "Their design program is actually highly regarded in the industry." "Is it?" Patricia asked with genuine surprise. "I've always believed in the connections made at proper schools. Both my children attended Yale, of course." The conversation shifted to reminiscences about elite schools I hadn't attended, summer homes I'd never visited, and people whose family names apparently mattered. With each topic, my exclusion became more pronounced. "Remember when we all went to Aspen last Christmas?" Madison asked Nathan. "The private lessons were worth every penny," Nathan replied, avoiding my eyes. "We'd spent last Christmas at my mother's modest house, where he'd claimed to love the homemade traditions." Lawrence directed the conversation toward family connections, asking pointed questions about my parents' professions and social circles. "My mother is a middle school English teacher," I said proudly. "She's dedicated her life to education." "How noble," Vivian murmured with the faintest hint of condescension. "And your father?" The question I always dreaded. He wasn't in the picture. "I see." Lawrence exchanged glances with his wife. "Nathan mentioned you're from the East Side?" The dinner continued with increasingly uncomfortable topics: family trust funds, country club memberships, and veiled references to Nathan's ex-girlfriend Charlotte, who apparently came from a suitable background and understood their world. Throughout it all, Nathan remained silent or changed the subject rather than defending me. When I mentioned my recent promotion, he quickly interrupted with an anecdote about his college days, minimizing my achievement. With each passing moment, the Nathan I thought I knew seemed to disappear, replaced by someone performing for his family's approval. The subtle excitement I'd felt about officially joining this family evaporated, replaced by a growing sense of alienation and doubt. As servers cleared the first course, Lawrence turned his attention fully to me, wine glass in hand. "So, Olivia, tell me more about this graphic design career. Is it a fulfilling hobby?" The dismissal of my profession as a hobby sent heat rising to my cheeks. "It's not a hobby, Mr. Blackwell. I'm a senior designer leading campaigns for national brands." "How charming," he replied, clearly unimpressed. "And what might someone earn in such a position?" "Enough for a comfortable life." Before I could respond, Nathan interjected with an uncomfortable laugh. "Dad, let's not talk money at dinner." "Nonsense," Lawrence countered. "We're family now, or soon will be. These practical matters are important." He turned back to me. "I understand entry-level designers make what, 40,000? Hardly enough to maintain the lifestyle Nathan's accustomed to. My salary was actually considerably higher after my promotion, but the implication was clear. Whatever I earned was insignificant compared to Blackwell wealth. "I support myself completely," I stated firmly. "I don't expect Nathan to finance my life." Vivian's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. "Darling, that's sweet but unrealistic. The Blackwell social obligations alone would require you to significantly adjust your professional commitments." "I have no plans to stop working," I replied, looking to Nathan for support. He studied his plate. "Liv does amazing work, but we haven't really discussed long-term career plans after marriage." His betrayal felt like a slap. We'd absolutely discussed this many times, and he'd always supported my career ambitions. Lawrence nodded approvingly at his son. "Smart. The Blackwell legacy requires certain adaptations. My wife understood that when we married." "Times have changed, Dad," Nathan said weakly. "Some things never change," Lawrence countered. "Family comes first. Always." Vivian seamlessly shifted the conversation. "Speaking of family traditions, we need to discuss the prenuptial agreement. Our family attorney has drafted something standard." The casual mention of a prenup during dinner, as if I weren't present, sent a chill through me. Not because I objected to the concept, I understood protecting generational wealth, but because Nathan had never mentioned it privately first. "We can discuss that later," Nathan mumbled, finally showing discomfort. "Nonsense," Lawrence waved him off. "Olivia understands business matters, don't you? The Blackwell holdings are complex. Several trusts, real estate portfolios, the dealerships. Standard protection." Of course, I managed, though my appetite had vanished. Madison leaned forward, refilling her wine. "Remember Charlotte's family?" They understood immediately. "Her father's a partner at Wilson and Crane." Nathan shifted uncomfortably. "Madison, that's not relevant." "I'm just saying," Madison continued, "when people come from similar backgrounds, these discussions are simpler." The conversation pivoted to Nathan's past relationship with Charlotte Wellington, whom I'd heard mentioned but knew little about. Apparently, they'd dated for 3 years and separated just months before Nathan met me. "The Wellingtons were devastated," Vivian reminisced. "They'd practically planned the wedding. Such a suitable match." Each comment revealed more about expectations I couldn't meet and a history Nathan had minimized. As dinner progressed, I recalled concerning moments I'd previously dismissed. Nathan's hesitation when introducing me to certain friends, his vague explanations about family events I wasn't invited to, his subtle critiques of my wardrobe for certain occasions. The alcohol flowed freely, loosening already loose tongues. Lawrence launched into stories about the Blackwell legacy, expectations for the next generation, and thinly veiled comments about maintaining certain standards. "Nathan will take over the Northeast expansion next year," Lawrence announced. Requires relocation to Boston, of course. This was news to me. We discussed potential opportunities, but Nathan had never mentioned Boston or any definite plans. My career, my friends, my mother, all were in Portland. I looked across at Nathan, who avoided my gaze, suddenly very interested in his wine glass. Another piece of my heart cracked. As servers presented the main course, the family fell into comfortable patterns that excluded me entirely, inside jokes I couldn't understand, references to people I'd never met, memories I hadn't shared. Nathan physically leaned away from the table toward his mother, creating further distance between us. The Wellington fundraiser is next month, Vivian commented casually. Charlotte asked specifically if you'd attend, Nathan. I'll check my calendar, he replied without consulting me. Tyler, who'd been relatively quiet, attempted inclusion. Olivia, did Nathan tell you about the vineyard we're acquiring? Prime Willamette Valley location. Before I could answer, Vivian interrupted. I've been talking with Elise Harrington about the wedding. June at the Riverside Country Club would be perfect. We haven't set a date yet, I said carefully. Or a venue. Vivian continued as if I hadn't spoken. The guest list is already at 300, mostly family connections and important business associates. I nearly choked on my water. Nathan and I had discussed a small, intimate ceremony of perhaps 50 people. The wedding Vivian described bore no resemblance to anything we'd planned. The Harrington's daughter had a 12-piece orchestra, Lawrence added. Magnificent affair. With mounting horror, I realized they were planning a wedding that served their social aspirations, not our relationship. Worse, Nathan sat silently, offering no correction or support. Throughout the meal, I tried maintaining dignity while feeling increasingly invisible. Each time I spoke about my life, interests, or experiences, the conversation quickly redirected to topics that highlighted my outsider status. Lawrence made pointed comments about certain standards for family events. Madison repeatedly mentioned Charlotte's social connections. Vivian discussed wedding plans without my input. And Nathan, the man who had held my face between his hands and promised to always be my partner, said nothing. The server placed delicate chocolate soufflés before each of us as Lawrence swirled the remaining cognac in his snifter. The evening had become an endurance test, each minute stretching painfully as I counted seconds until escape. Well, Lawrence began, his voice carrying the false joviality of someone about to say something intentionally provocative. I believe it's time we address the elephant in the room. The table fell quiet. Even the clink of silverware ceased. Lawrence turned his full attention to me, eyes sharp despite the alcohol he'd consumed. Olivia, I pride myself on directness. The Blackwells have spent generations building what we have today. Understanding your intentions with my son is not just my right, but my responsibility. My pulse quickened. My intentions? Yes. He placed his glass down deliberately. Nathan represents significant assets beyond his personal charm. A young woman from your background suddenly entering our circle raises natural questions. The implication hung heavy in the air. Dad, Nathan finally interjected, but without conviction. Lawrence raised a hand to silence him. Someone needs to be direct here. The timing is suspicious. Nathan's position in the company is about to expand considerably. His trust fund vests fully at 30. And suddenly, here you are. My hands trembled beneath the table. Mr. Blackwell, I love your son. Not his money or position. Lawrence's laugh was sharp and dismissive. Everyone claims that, my dear. But let's be honest. What exactly do you bring to this match, beyond an interesting story of a girl from the wrong side of town catching a wealthy husband? The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dad, that's not fair, Nathan said weakly. Isn't it? Lawrence challenged. Consider the facts. No family connections. No significant assets. A career that, while creative, hardly compares to the opportunities our family provides. Let's call this what it is. He leaned forward, eyes locked on mine. You're a gold digger. Cleverer than most, I'll grant you, but the pattern is unmistakable. Absolute silence descended. The accusation hung in the air, vicious and raw. I turned to Nathan, waiting for his defense, his outrage, his immediate rejection of his father's cruelty. Instead, Nathan laughed. Not a nervous laugh or uncomfortable chuckle, but an actual laugh of agreement. He looked at his father with something like approval and added, "She does always order the most expensive wine when we go out." My blood turned to ice. Time seemed to slow as I processed what had just happened. The man I'd agreed to marry, who had promised to stand beside me always, had not only failed to defend me, he had joined the attack. In that crystalline moment of clarity, countless small betrayals clicked into focus. Nathan pulling me away when I tried discussing art with his father's colleagues, his suggestions about upgrading my wardrobe. His reluctance to introduce me to certain friends, his comments about my cute apartment before we moved in together. I saw with sudden, painful clarity that Nathan had never fully accepted me as his equal. He'd enjoyed my differences as a novelty while expecting eventual assimilation into his world on his terms. My engagement ring felt suddenly heavy, constricting. The 2-carat diamond that had once symbolized our future now represented a fundamental misunderstanding of who I was and what I valued. With perfect calm that belied the storm inside me, I slipped the ring from my finger. The motion caught everyone's attention, the small clink as I placed it beside Nathan's plate deafening in the silence. "Olivia," Nathan started, realization dawning too late. I stood slowly, napkin placed precisely beside my untouched dessert. My legs felt disconnected from my body as I pushed my chair back, its scrape against hardwood floor cutting through the tense silence. Every eye followed as I straightened my spine, gathered my small clutch purse, and turned without a word. Each step toward the dining room door echoed. My heartbeat pounded in my ears, yet strange calm guided me through the foyer toward the front entrance. Behind me, chairs scraped as someone, Nathan, presumably, stood. "Dramatic exits won't change reality, my dear," Lawrence called after me, his voice floating down the hallway. Nathan caught up as I reached for the door handle. "Liv, wait. Dad's had too much to drink." "He doesn't mean." I turned to face him, finding strange power in my silence. His familiar face, the face I'd woken up to countless mornings, the face I'd thought I'd grow old beside, now seemed like a stranger's. "Olivia, please. Let me drive you home. We can talk about this." I shook my head once, opened the heavy door, and stepped into the cool night air. The door closed behind me with quiet finality. The rain had stopped, leaving the world washed clean. Stars peeked through breaking clouds as I walked to my car, each step carrying me further from the life I'd thought I wanted. Inside my vehicle, hands steady on the steering wheel, I took my first full breath in hours. Tears would come later, a torrent of them, but in this moment, strange lightness filled me. The ring no longer weighed down my hand. The future no longer constrained by expectations I could never meet. I started the engine and drove away from the Blackwell estate without looking back. The 20-minute drive home passed in a blur of streetlights and quiet roads. Inside my apartment, thankfully still mine as we'd kept both places after moving in together, I kicked off my heels and sat in darkness on my living room floor, back against the couch. My phone buzzed relentlessly. "Nathan, 7 missed calls, 12 text messages. Please call me." Dad was out of line. "You know, I don't think that about you. It was just a stupid joke." "Where are you?" "I'm coming over. We need to talk about this." "You're overreacting." That last one broke the dam. Tears streamed down my face as everything crashed over me at once, the humiliation, the betrayal, the realization that the future I'd imagined was built on sand. I texted Rachel, "Engagement dinner disaster. Need you." She arrived 20 minutes later with a bottle of wine and fierce loyalty. I recounted the evening through tears and occasional laughter at the absurdity of it all. "That absolute bastard," Rachel fumed, pouring generous glasses. Both of them. I just keep replaying that laugh, I admitted. Like they shared some private joke at my expense. Because they did, Rachel said bluntly. Rich boys like Nathan play at rebellion by dating regular girls, but most expect you to eventually transform into what their family wants. My phone continued buzzing. Nathan's messages grew increasingly desperate. Please just talk to me. I'm outside your building. I know you're home. Your car is here. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Rachel took my phone, typed a response, and handed it back for my approval. Not tonight. I need space. I sent it, silencing my phone afterward. Together, Rachel and I gathered Nathan's belongings from my apartment, a task less extensive than expected. Despite 2 years together, he'd left minimal imprints on my personal space. That night, lying in bed alone, I replayed our relationship from beginning to end. The signs had always been there. Nathan commenting on my creativity when meeting his colleagues, as if translating my career into terms they might accept. His surprise when I could intelligently discuss economics or politics, revealing his underlying assumptions. His habit of handling any situation involving money, supposedly to be generous, but effectively keeping me dependent. Morning arrived with pounding on my door. Nathan stood outside with rumpled clothes, bloodshot eyes, and a massive bouquet of roses. 5 minutes, he pleaded. Please. Against better judgment, I let him in, keeping distance between us as he placed the flowers on the counter. I'm so sorry, he began. Dad was drunk and inappropriate. I should have shut him down immediately. But you didn't, I replied calmly. You laughed. It was nervous laughter. An uncomfortable reaction to an uncomfortable situation. I shook my head. No, Nathan. I know the difference. You agreed with him. That's not true. His desperation grew visible. The wine comment was just a stupid joke. I was trying to lighten the tension. By throwing me under the bus? He ran his hand through his hair, frustration mounting. You don't understand the pressure in these situations. Sometimes it's easier to go along momentarily than create a scene. Create a scene? My voice remained steady. Standing up for the woman you supposedly want to marry isn't creating a scene. It's the bare minimum. I'll talk to them, he promised. I'll make this right. Dad will apologize. This isn't about your father apologizing. It's about you. Nathan paced my small living room. What do you want me to say? That I screwed up? Fine, I screwed up. One mistake in 2 years, and you're ready to throw everything away. His characterization ignited anger I'd been too shocked to feel the previous night. One mistake? Nathan, you sat silently while your entire family dismantled everything about me. My background, my career, my value. You let them plan a wedding that resembled nothing we'd discussed. You didn't mention Boston or prenups or any of the actual plans you've apparently made for our future. We can work through all that, he insisted. Those are just details. They're not details. They're fundamental aspects of who we are and what we want. And last night showed me that what you want isn't me, it's some version of me that fits your family's expectations. Nathan's expression shifted from contrition to frustration. You're being unfair. I chose you, didn't I? Against everyone's expectations. Chose me. I repeated. Like I should be grateful? That's exactly the problem, Nathan. You see our relationship as you doing me a favor. That's not what I meant. He looked genuinely distressed. I love you for who you are. No, I said quietly. You love the idea of me. The creative, independent woman who's different from your usual circle. But you don't actually respect that independence when it conflicts with your world. Nathan knelt before me, taking my hands. I'll prove you wrong. I'll stand up to them. I'll do whatever it takes. Looking into his familiar eyes, I felt only sadness. Even if you did that now, I'd always know it wasn't your first instinct. Your first instinct was to join them. After Nathan left, promises of fixing everything trailing behind him, the next wave of interference began. First came Vivian, arriving unannounced at my office 3 days later. Heads turned as the elegant woman in designer clothes asked for me at reception. Jessica, my boss, raised an eyebrow as I led Vivian to our small conference room. "This has gone on long enough," she began without preamble. "Nathan is devastated." "I'm sorry to hear that." Her perfectly manicured hand dismissed my response. "Misunderstandings happen in families. Lawrence can be direct, but his concerns come from protecting the family." "Calling someone a gold digger isn't direct, Mrs. Blackwell. It's insulting and untrue." She sighed as if I were being particularly difficult. Perhaps it was poorly phrased. The point remains that marriage is about more than just feelings. It's about compatible backgrounds, shared values, understanding one's role. That's exactly why I returned the ring. Vivian's facade cracked slightly. "Nathan has potential beyond what you can imagine. He needs a partner who enhances his position, not complicates it." "Then he should find that person," I replied. "It's not me." She left with a backhanded apology about hoping I'd be more reasonable. Lawrence's approach came via email, a business-like message outlining terms should I reconsider, including a position at the Blackwell Foundation that would allow me to pursue creative interests while maintaining appropriate social standing. The implicit bribe disgusted me more than his original insult. Surprisingly, Madison reached out next with an unexpected coffee invitation. Unlike her parents, she seemed genuinely reflective. "I was awful that night," she admitted, stirring her latte. "But you should know Nathan's never fought with Dad like he did after you left. I've never seen him stand up to him before." "Too little, too late," I replied, though the information gave me pause. "Maybe," she acknowledged. "But that doesn't mean it's not growth." The most revealing conversation came from Tyler, who called rather than ambushed me in person. "Nathan's a mess," he began. "But I didn't call to guilt you. Actually, I wanted to say I get it. What Dad said was unforgivable. Thank you for acknowledging that. Here's what you might not understand," Tyler continued. "We were all raised with impossible expectations. Nathan's the golden child, the heir apparent. His whole life has been about pleasing Dad. That doesn't excuse betrayal." "No," Tyler agreed. "It doesn't. But breaking that pattern of seeking approval isn't simple. Ask me how I know." The conversation left me thoughtful but unchanged in my decision. I sent Nathan a final message articulating exactly why his behavior had been unacceptable and making clear that respect wasn't negotiable in any relationship I would be part of. His response, pages of promises to change, to stand up to his family, to prove himself worthy, showed he still didn't fully understand. He was focused on fixing the outcome rather than truly examining why it had happened in the first place. I didn't reply. The first month after ending my engagement felt like recovering from surgery, painful but necessary for healing. I moved through days in a fog, functioning professionally while emotionally numb. Nights were hardest, lying awake replaying moments, questioning if I'd overreacted. At Rachel's insistence, I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Langley, who helped me recognize patterns I'd missed. "What you're describing sounds like emotional manipulation," she noted during our third session. "The expectation that you should be grateful for being chosen, the subtle undermining of your independence, the isolation from his full life while being expected to integrate him into yours." "But he did love me," I insisted, still struggling with the loss. "I don't doubt that," she replied. "But love without respect becomes ownership, not partnership." Those words stayed with me, illuminating past interactions I'd rationalized. Nathan's helpful suggestions about my appearance before meeting his friends. His dismissive tone when I'd expressed concerns about fitting into his world. His expectation that I'd eventually prioritize his career over mine. I reconnected with friends I'd unconsciously distanced during my relationship. My college roommate Tasha visited for a weekend, bringing perspective I needed. "Remember when you turned down that Chicago internship because Nathan thought long distance would be too hard?" she reminded me. "That wasn't you. The Olivia I knew would never let anyone limit her opportunities." My mother's wisdom proved particularly healing when I finally told her everything. She drove up from Portland for the weekend, bringing homemade chicken soup and unconditional support. "I'm proud of you," she said, surprising me. "It takes tremendous courage to walk away from something that looks perfect on the outside but isn't right on the inside." "I feel like I failed," I admitted. "No," she corrected firmly. "You succeeded at the most important thing, honoring your worth." She shared stories I'd never heard about her own relationship with my father, how she'd ignored red flags because she wanted to believe in the relationship, how she diminished herself, trying to meet impossible expectations. "The hardest lesson I learned," she told me, "is that loving someone doesn't require becoming smaller. Real love gives you room to grow." Work became my sanctuary. The creative challenges of design offered both distraction and purpose. Jessica assigned me to lead our newest campaign for an eco-conscious clothing brand, recognizing my need for positive focus. The project's success caught industry attention, leading to an unexpected opportunity, consideration for our agency's new creative director position. The role would mean more responsibility, more creative control, and significantly higher compensation. Before the engagement dinner disaster, I might have hesitated, wondering how such a demanding position would affect my relationship. Now, I pursued it wholeheartedly, pouring my energy into the interview presentation. "Your concept for the department's future direction is exceptional," Jessica told me afterward. "I've never seen you this focused and confident." I realized she was right. Without the subtle undertow of trying to balance Nathan's expectations, my professional instincts had sharpened. Ideas flowed more freely. Presentations felt more authentic. I stopped second-guessing design choices that might seem too edgy for the Blackwell world I'd been trying to fit into. Nathan continued his efforts to reconcile, though with decreasing frequency. Flowers arrived at my office. Handwritten letters appeared in my mailbox. Mutual friends reported his apparent transformation, standing up to his father at work, declining family events, even seeing a therapist himself. Part of me wanted to believe he could change. The larger part recognized that, even if he did, too much damage had been done. Trust, once shattered, couldn't simply be glued back together. Social media made avoiding him difficult. Though I'd unfriended Nathan, our overlapping circles meant his life occasionally appeared on my feed. Photos of him at charity events. Business announcements about the Blackwell expansion. Once, painfully, a picture of him with Charlotte Wellington at a gallery opening, her hand casually resting on his arm. That image surprisingly hurt less than expected. The pain felt distant, like remembering an old injury rather than suffering a fresh wound. 3 months after returning Nathan's ring, I joined a local designers collective that met monthly to share ideas and support each other's creative growth. The community of independent creatives provided something I hadn't realized I'd been missing. Professional relationships based on mutual respect rather than hierarchy or connection. Through the collective, I met Angela, a brilliant UX designer who became both mentor and friend. Her 15 years in the industry offered perspective I valued, particularly as I considered whether to accept the creative director role or explore other options. Sometimes walking away from what seems secure opens doors you couldn't previously see, she advised over coffee. "What would you do if you weren't afraid of making the wrong choice?" Her question resonated deeply. What had held me back from certain ambitions? How much had I unconsciously limited myself to maintain relationship harmony? Journaling became part of my healing process. Each evening I documented small victories, unexpected joys, and painful realizations alike. Reading back through entries from the early days after the breakup to more recent ones revealed a transformation I hadn't fully appreciated while living it. Early entries showed raw pain and questioning. Did I throw away something irreplaceable? Will I regret this when the hurt fades? Later ones reflected growing clarity. Realized today I haven't apologized for my opinions once this week. Progress. Presented my ideas without qualification or softening. The client loved the directness. Remembered how Nathan laughed at his father's comment. Not with pain, but with gratitude for the truth it revealed before I married into that. 6 months after the engagement dinner, I found myself not just surviving, but genuinely thriving. The creative director position was mine. My redesigned apartment reflected my aesthetic without compromise. Weekends filled with activities I'd put aside, hiking with Rachel, art classes, volunteering at the literacy center where my mother had always hoped I'd get involved. Nathan remained peripherally in my awareness, but no longer dominated my thoughts. When mutual friends mentioned him, I could listen without emotional turmoil. His name became just a name, not a trigger for regret or anger. I recognized this transition as the beginning of true healing, not the absence of pain, but its transformation into something constructive. Every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of standing firm in my decision had built something precious, unshakable self-trust. 8 months after walking out of the Blackwell mansion, I signed the lease on a sunlit apartment overlooking the river. The space cost more than my previous place, but my promotion made it comfortably affordable without stretching my budget. Moving day felt ceremonial, Rachel, Tasha, and colleagues from work helping carry furniture and boxes, christening the space with takeout and champagne afterward. To new beginnings, Rachel toasted, glasses clinking as sunset painted my new living room in amber light. The apartment represented more than a change of address. Each design choice, from the modern sectional sofa to the gallery wall of local artists' work, reflected decisions made solely for myself. No compromises to accommodate someone else's taste or expectations. No mental calculations about what would impress future in-laws or fit a particular social image. My relationship with my mother deepened during this period. Weekly phone calls became genuine conversations rather than surface updates. She visited more frequently, and I made more trips to Portland, our relationship evolving into the adult friendship neither of us had quite managed before. "You remind me of my mother," she told me during one visit, surprising me. She had this unshakable sense of herself, even when the world tried to tell her otherwise. "I see that in you now." The observation touched me deeply. My grandmother had been my childhood hero, a woman who'd run her own bookshop in the 1960s despite community expectations that she'd be content as just a wife and mother. Professional growth continued as I settled into the creative director role. Our agency expanded, taking on larger clients drawn by our innovative campaigns. I built a team that reflected my values, diverse perspectives, collaborative rather than competitive, excellence without ego. The most unexpected development came through my designers collective. A casual conversation about freelance work evolved into a business proposal, several of us combining expertise to launch a boutique agency focused on sustainable brands. The potential partnership offered creative freedom and purpose alignment I found irresistible. Amidst these positive changes, I inevitably crossed paths with Nathan. The creative community in our city wasn't large enough to avoid intersection forever. The encounter happened at the annual Advertising Association Gala. I attended representing our agency, wearing a vibrant blue jumpsuit that reflected my evolved style, confident, distinctive, unconcerned with conventional expectations. Nathan stood with colleagues near the bar, stopping mid-conversation when he saw me. 6 months had changed him too, a new haircut, slight weight loss, something different in his posture. "Olivia," he said, approaching cautiously. "You look wonderful." "Thank you. How are you, Nathan?" The ordinary question carried extraordinary weight. This man had once been my future. Now he was nearly a stranger. "Good. Better." He hesitated. "The Boston expansion is moving forward, but I've stepped back from leading it." "Oh!" Genuine surprise colored my response. I realized I was following my father's plan, not my own. His smile held sadness and something like wisdom. Some lessons come at high cost. Our conversation remained brief, polite, tinged with mutual recognition of what had been lost and what had perhaps been gained through that loss. As we parted, Nathan said something that stayed with me. "You deserved better that night. And every night before it when I failed to be the partner you deserved. No excuses. No renewed attempts at reconciliation. Just acknowledgement of truth." Walking away from that interaction, I felt the final piece of my healing click into place. The anger that had occasionally resurfaced was gone, replaced by a calm recognition that everything had unfolded exactly as it needed to. The journey from that devastating dinner to this moment of peace hadn't been linear. Therapy had helped me recognize patterns from my own past that had made me vulnerable, my desire to prove my worth, my tendency to over-accommodate, my fear that standing firm in my needs meant being difficult or demanding. Dr. Langley's guidance had been particularly valuable in helping me see how the gold digger accusation had struck so deeply because it played on insecurities about class differences I'd internalized despite my outer confidence. "The most powerful moment in your story," she'd noted, "wasn't leaving the dinner. It was maintaining your decision despite the pressure to return to what was familiar." She was right. Each time I'd declined Nathan's increasingly desperate attempts at reconciliation, I'd strengthened my self-trust. Each professional achievement undiminished by thoughts of how it might impact someone else's expectations had rebuilt confidence in my path. The unexpected friendship with Madison Blackwell developed gradually through occasional coffee meetings. Her perspective on growing up with Lawrence's demanding expectations helped contextualize Nathan's behavior without excusing it. "We were raised to believe appearance matters more than authenticity," she explained during one conversation. Nathan's struggling to unlearn that. "Your leaving forced him to question everything." "I couldn't stay to help him through that journey," I replied. "I know," she said simply. "That's why it's actually working." 10 months after that fateful dinner, a new relationship began developing with Alex, a commercial photographer I'd collaborated with on several campaigns. Our connection evolved organically from professional respect to friendship to something more. The contrast between this relationship and my time with Nathan couldn't have been starker. Alex asked questions about my work with genuine interest, considered my opinion on decisions that affected us both, and never once made me feel my background or career were liabilities rather than strengths. Most importantly, I entered this relationship with clearer boundaries and stronger sense of self. No more diminishing my achievements to avoid intimidating someone. No more hesitating to express preferences or concerns. No more accepting subtle dismissals of what mattered to me. When Alex met my mother, their immediate connection highlighted another difference. He approached her as someone valuable to know because she was important to me, not as an obligation to endure or a background to overcome. My professional life continued flourishing. The boutique agency concept moved from idea to business plan to reality, launching with 3 founding partners and a focus on brands committed to social and environmental responsibility. Leaving the security of my creative director position wasn't easy, but as my mother had wisely observed, sometimes the most valuable things we build come after walking away from what feels safe. Our first major client, an innovative sustainable fashion brand, brought both creative challenge and alignment with my values. The campaign we developed earned industry recognition and, more importantly, helped promote business practices I believed in. Looking back on the journey from that humiliating dinner to this point of authentic success, I recognized the profound gift hidden within that painful experience. Had Nathan defended me that night, had we somehow moved forward with the engagement, I would have spent years trying to contort myself into someone who could fit the Blackwell mold. The moment Lawrence called me a gold digger and Nathan laughed wasn't the real betrayal. The real betrayal had been more subtle. Nathan's unspoken expectation that I would eventually transform into someone who belonged in his world on his world's terms. Walking away wasn't just about leaving a man who failed to defend me. It was about refusing to abandon myself. Every step since then, rebuilding my career, strengthening friendships, creating a home that reflected my values, opening to new love, had reinforced that initial act of self-respect. The most profound lesson wasn't about relationship red flags or class differences or even standing up for yourself in dramatic moments. It was the quiet, powerful understanding that sacrifice becomes self-erasure when it requires giving up your essential truth. True partnership, in love, friendship, or business, doesn't demand diminishment but offers fertile ground for growth. Real love includes protection and advocacy, yes, but more fundamentally, it includes the space to be authentically yourself without constant translation or apology. The dignity and respect I'd insisted on that night weren't luxury items I couldn't afford. They were the basic currency of any relationship worth having. As I stand here today, building a business aligned with my values, surrounded by relationships that nourish rather than deplete me, I'm grateful for the painful clarity that dinner provided. Sometimes the most valuable things we gain come disguised as losses. Have you ever had to walk away from something that looked perfect from the outside but wasn't right for you? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today to find their own courage. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button if this story resonated with you. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your worth is never up for negotiation.